There's a lot to talk about in the state of Indiana, but definitely what has to be addressed first is the Indianapolis Colts, because the Colts fan experience just reached a new miserable low. I struggled for a long time to decide what I was going to say about this game first, and really what I was going to say about this game at all, because this was horrific to watch. This was depressing, and I hope that we have good memories to replace it very, very soon, because this being effectively the last taste in the mouth, the last sight that Colts fans see when it comes to this franchise and this team, it's not a good spot to be in, right? Right away when this game begins, Joe Flacco started, right? Joe Flacco starts this game. Anthony Richardson was fine. He was just out with an injury for the entirety of the week of practice. Of course, in that situation, at this point in the year, when you're playing a crucial game, you're going to want to have a quarterback that is familiar with the scout team, was taking reps against the scout team, familiar with the opposing team in a more physical sense. So Joe Flacco starts this game. There's a wide array, really, of important statistics that I want to point out right away. 45-33 loss. Drew Lock for the Giants had 309 yards and 4 touchdowns through the air. Malik Neighbors had 7 catches, 171 yards, and 2 of those touchdowns. Joe Flacco threw 2 interceptions. He had 1 lost fumble and was sacked twice. Matt Gay missed a field goal. New York had a 100-yard kickoff return touchdown to start the second half. And there is one very silent city in Indianapolis watching from states away as the Indianapolis Colts season completely falls apart right in front of their eyes in the one game that they are least likely to have a result like that occur in. This game, to me, was won in the margins. Indianapolis outgained New York through the air. They threw the ball better at a more effective rate than the Giants did. They ran the ball better with Jonathan Taylor than the Giants did with both Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary. Indianapolis objectively has the better roster. They objectively have the better team. But New York won the turnover battle. And New York won in the margins, really, where they had those big plays. You, of course, had that kickoff return touchdown. The Colts missed that field goal. And New York got to the quarterback. They got to Joe Flacco. Of course, he was sacked twice. Drew Lock wasn't sacked at all. They took advantage of the gifts handed to them in a way that Indianapolis couldn't. If Indianapolis threw a pick, the Giants were scoring on the next drive, right? If the Giants were punting the ball away to the Colts and they had good field position, they were throwing a pick themselves, or perhaps the drive would sputter, they'd kick a field goal, maybe they'd make it, maybe they'd miss it. The Colts weren't converting. The Colts weren't, first of all, putting together the explosive plays necessary to beat the Giants basically anywhere other than with Alec Pierce. And we knew how big Alec Pierce was going to be in this game, and he was fantastic with Joe Flacco. But other than that, the Colts didn't really have much play down the field. They didn't have as many explosive plays as you would anticipate them having against a team like the Giants. And across the board, when Indianapolis had a chance, when they were given an opportunity, when they were gifted an opportunity of a drive or a play or some lucky break by the New York Giants, who prior to this game had 2 wins. This would be their 3rd win on the year. It's week 17. The Colts didn't do much with it, and this is a game where you have to make something happen. When you're given a gift, whether it's a punt, whether you force a 3 and out and the offense gets the ball back, or whether the Giants make some mistake, some misread, some miscommunication, and that forces a 2nd and long. Defensively, you have to take advantage of that. The Colts just didn't take as much advantage of the opportunities they were given by the Giants as they needed to, and that's a major reason, partially, why they lost. The Giants, of course, come into this game with a lot of fight, and right away when they start off, they jump out to that lead where they have that interception, they score that touchdown, they go up 7-0, and all of a sudden the Giants start to believe that they have a chance to win this game, and they ran with it. And they ran with it completely and entirely. Last week against the Falcons, the Giants fell apart. They lost 40-7. They kind of gave up. They rolled over. And the Colts had to have a fast start to force the Giants to roll over just like they did before. And the Giants took an early lead. And all of a sudden in their heads, the conversation begins to flip, and the thoughts begin to turn to the idea that maybe the Giants can win this game. And they ran with that idea. Drew Lock played incredibly. The Colts floundered. And what do you know? The Giants won. It's really an effort problem to me for the Colts. Pat McAfee went on a rant on Twitter. I think he was absolutely right. I felt very validated by all of his words there. There wasn't enough of a sense of urgency in this game. With 4 minutes left in the first half, as we dwindled down to the 2-minute warning, the Colts had a drive and an opportunity to score. It didn't feel like they had the urgency. And part of that was because of Steichen keeping them in a regular tempo offense, right? Not picking up the pace at all, no huddle presence at all whatsoever. And the Colts in that drive, it just didn't feel like they had the urgency to push themselves forward to score. And that's a sense of really a lack of effort. And it's a situation where whether it's coaching, whether it's players, I think it's both. I think it primarily falls on the way this team is being run, the way it's being handled, whether that's a general manager problem, whether that's a head coach problem, a larger coaching staff problem, an owner problem. The Giants really outplayed the Colts, which is completely not okay when the Colts are playing for a playoff spot and the Giants are playing for absolutely nothing and are honestly even incentivized to lose so they can get a better draft pick. The Colts somehow in this game fell apart completely, and it was partially because of that lack of urgency. The team wasn't ready. The defense was getting picked apart by Drew Lock, right, who's barely started this year, and we're talking about the New York Giants. The offense was completely misaligned the entire day. This team seemingly wasn't ready for the 2-win New York Giants. And if that's the case, then we didn't deserve to be in the playoffs anyway. At this point, the Colts are just wasting talents because this is another year where a talented team with a young quarterback with plenty of pieces around him, plenty of pieces, truly quality pieces around him that could potentially fuel this team towards success. This is a team that has the opportunity to make something happen, make the playoffs, maybe win a couple games while we get there. And again, it's a 9-8, or in this case, 8-9, maybe 7-10 year where the Colts are wasting talent. In these talent years of Alec Pierce, Michael Pittman Jr., Jonathan Taylor, great example, Josh Downs, A.D. Mitchell, these young players who are only going to be young for so long and are only going to be in their primes for so long for the players in that list that are, we're wasting those years, right? We're not optimally utilizing those players or pairing them with an elite quarterback consistently. And it comes down to how the team's being handled because it's an effort issue. It feels like the team isn't fully committed to winning every single week, and that comes down to coaching and whether that's the general manager as well, whether we're putting together a team and fueling this team for success in the way that we need to. It just doesn't seem like that's the case, and we're wasting talent. So whether that means Chris Ballard needs to go, whether that means Steichen needs to go, whether that means we need a new quarterback, I don't really know. We're going to have all offseason to figure that out and answer those questions. But this team has talent, and it's a playoff caliber roster, and they're not using it the right way. They're not using it in the most optimal manner. And that's the most frustrating thing a Colts fan or a fan of any team can possibly experience. And it's indicative of a middling 8-win, 9-win, 7-win team year after year that never has a high enough draft pick to cause significant change. And in the draft and in free agency and across the board, can't seem to scrounge together a team or a group of pieces or a roster and a management of that roster capable of bringing the Colts to a higher level that they have not achieved since 2020. That was the last time they made the playoffs. They went 11-5. The quarterback question is something that I am very curious about because Anthony Richardson may be the solution and he might not be. We can't bring in another old and fading quarterback, in my opinion, because that would waste more roster talent, right? We at this point we have a group of young receivers. Jonathan Taylor is getting older, but we have largely a young team with a group of young players capable of doing great things in this league and in this postseason. So the Colts, obviously it makes sense, draft a young quarterback like Anthony Richardson, nurture him, develop him, turn him into someone capable of doing great things in the postseason, get to the postseason, do great things, win a Super Bowl, right? Anthony Richardson right now hasn't quite shown that level of prowess, and the question is whether or not he is the long-term solution and if he can take us where we want to go. And when I say that, I mean Super Bowl, because when you draft a young quarterback in the first round, especially that high, the thought is that he is going to be the guy that's going to take this team to a Super Bowl. We'd waste if we bring in Kirk Cousins, for example, or someone along the lines of Sam Darnold is who I was thinking of. Someone like that, and he's a bad example, but Kirk Cousins is the best one. Bring in someone like Kirk Cousins, Jimmy Garoppolo, right? Bring in an old, fading, aging quarterback once again. If we just continue that trend, the Colts are going to lose interest. The fans are going to lose interest. There's going to be a passion for the Colts that just dwindles, and we're going to waste more roster talent years because that quarterback's going to be lackluster. He's not going to be able to take us to the next level. And once again, great players, great receivers, great running backs, a great defense is not going to be able to take itself to the next level. We couldn't really draft a new quarterback, right? Because that would set us back a couple of years. It'd be a real major risk because you'd have to pick the right guy. And if you don't, then you just set yourself back a few years and reset this cycle where we have another couple years of trying to figure out if the new quarterback is the right fit, the same way we have been with Anthony Richardson. And the real question is whether or not Anthony Richardson is even good enough to take us where we want to go. If we stick with him, could be great, could be the right decision. Maybe it completely falls apart and we're set back 5-10 more years, and then we just have to keep rebuilding and restart once again with a new core group of young players. That would be the worst case scenario. Or if we switch to a different quarterback in some way, maybe it's worse. Maybe it's worse than what Anthony Richardson could have been, and maybe the team is worse, and maybe, again, they're set back for another group of years, truly. And as this core group of players gets older, Jonathan Taylor is eventually going to age out. The defense, pieces of this defense are eventually going to get too old. It's pick your poison, really. Every answer, every question, every answer to every question, every opportunity, it seems wrong. It feels incorrect, and it feels like there's nothing this team can do right. Assuredly, it's purgatory. It's a painful, grueling, frustrating, demoralizing purgatory where this team is in the middle of the pack every single year, just outside of the playoffs, doesn't have high enough of a draft pick to spur major change, and we don't know what to do with our quarterback situation. Because is Anthony Richardson the answer? Maybe, but we don't have strong evidence either way, and whether we stick with him or go in a different direction or temporarily go in a different direction, even like we did this year with the Joe Flacco situation, it's going to cause outrage. It's going to cause the fans to be upset regardless, and if it doesn't pan out, then the Colts are set back even more, and this core group of young players is just going to get older, is just going to get weaker, and is just going to be less likely to open up a Super Bowl window for this franchise. And again, the Colts, another year just outside of the playoffs or in the playoffs, but have no real chance of making anything happen once they get there. Once again, the Indianapolis Colts remain in purgatory and remain in this position where it feels like something bigger needs to change. And the question is whether or not the Colts are going to be willing to make that change, because to lose to the Giants this bad, to let 45 points be put up on a team that usually lets up only 14 in Week 17 in a meaningful game with the playoffs in sight, that is absolutely unacceptable. And I surely hope that this is the wake-up call that allows the Colts to realize that something bigger needs to be fixed if this team is going to go to the next level.